Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Unfiltered and Unapologetic. I'm your host, Caitlin Gil-Soto, and if you're new here, welcome. This is a space where we have honest conversations about healing, relationships, money, faith, personal growth, and the cultural, emotional, and life experiences that shape who we become. The conversations our families didn't always have, the lessons life teaches us anyway, and what it actually looks like to build a life that feels aligned with who you are becoming. So, whether you're driving, cleaning, at the gym, on a walk, or avoiding a text message you've been meaning to answer, I'm glad you're here. Let's get into today's episode. Let's start with one question. What are the conversations we never had growing up? I grew up in a Dominican family, so obviously that's the perspective I'm speaking from today. But the more I reflected on this episode, the more I realized this isn't just a Dominican conversation. It's a human one. Every family is different. Every family has its own traditions, strengths, values, and challenges. I'm not trying to define an entire culture. I'm simply sharing what shaped me. Because one thing I've learned is that the more specific our stories are, the more universal they become. I've had people from so many different backgrounds reach out after different episodes and say, that sounded exactly like my family. So wherever you come from, I hope you listen through the lens of your own experiences. And not to judge your family, not to blame anyone, just to become curious about what shaped you. So, growing up in a Dominican family, I inherited so many beautiful things: faith, a deep sense of family, a strong work ethic, community, traditions I'll always be grateful for. And those are gifts. But as I've gotten older, I've realized we inherit more than just traditions. We inherit ways of communicating, ways of loving, ways of handling conflict. Sometimes we inherit conversations, and sometimes we inherit silence. And silence has a way of becoming a teacher too. It teaches us what's uncomfortable, what's acceptable, what we should be keeping to ourselves, what nobody talks about. Sometimes what shapes us the most isn't what we were taught. It's what was never talked about. And maybe that's what we're really talking about today. Our emotional legacy. Not just what was passed down to us, but what will one day be passed through us. Because every family passes something down. The question is, what will we pass on? As you're listening today, I'd love for you to think about this. What do you think your family passed down that had nothing to do with genetics? Not your eye color, not your smile, not your beliefs, your habits, the way you communicate, the way you experience conflict, the way you receive love. What did you learn without anybody ever saying a word? So one thing I've realized is that we don't notice what's missing while we're growing up. Because how could we? When you're a kid, you assume the way your family does things is just normal. You don't question it, you don't think. Nobody ever taught me how to apologize, or nobody explained what anxiety feels like, or nobody taught me how to ask for help. You don't know what you don't know. It's usually adulthood that reveals those missing conversations. Maybe it's your first heartbreak or your first friendship that falls apart, your first leadership role, your first therapy session, or the first time someone asks, "How are you?" Really? And you realize you don't know how to answer. I know that was true for me. I used to think adulthood automatically came with certain skills: communication, emotional regulation, repairing relationships, asking for help, being kinder to yourself. But it doesn't. Life introduces the lesson. Whether we learn it, it's up to us. That realization changed something for me because instead of asking, "What's wrong with me?" I started asking, "Was I ever taught this?" Those are two completely different questions. Maybe there's nothing wrong with you. Maybe nobody ever had that conversation with you. And if that's true, you get to learn it now. One of the reasons I think this matters so much is because we don't experience life only through our personalities. We experience life through the stories we inherited, the stories we believe about ourselves, about other people, about what success looks like, about what love should look like, about what it means to be good. Sometimes we don't even realize those stories are ours. We simply assume they're true until one day life invites us to question them. And I think that's one of the greatest invitations adulthood gives us, not to reject where we come from, but to become curious about it. Okay, I have a journal prompt here for you guys. What's something you've had to teach yourself as an adult that you assumed everyone else just knew? So, as I was thinking about this episode, I kept coming back to one question. What are the conversations I wish someone had with me growing up? Not because I expected my family to have all the answers, and not because I think they intentionally kept these conversations from me, but because there are certain things I didn't realize I needed until I became an adult. The first one is this: you are allowed to change. Growing up, we are constantly asked, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" As if we're supposed to have our whole life figured out before we've really lived it. But nobody really tells you that you're going to change. The things you wanted at 20 might not be the things that you want at 30. The career that once excited you might no longer fit. The friendships that once felt effortless might naturally evolve. Even the version of yourself that helped you survive one season of life might not be the version that's meant to carry you into the next. And I've felt that in my own life. If you've listened to the podcast from the beginning, you've probably noticed that I've changed too. Not because I've become a different person, but because I've grown into a version of myself that asks different questions. And I hope to keep changing. Because changing doesn't always mean you've lost yourself. Sometimes it means you found more of yourself. Another conversation I wish we had more often is this: adults don't have everything figured out. When I was little, I thought adults knew everything. And then I became one, and I realized most of us are learning as we go. We're figuring out relationships, careers, money, communication, faith. No birthday suddenly unlocks all the answers. That realization didn't make me lose respect for the adults in my life. It actually gave me more compassion because I realized they were experiencing many things for the first time too. Maybe they were parenting for the first time. Maybe they were navigating financial stress for the first time. Or maybe they were trying to hold a family together for the first time, or trying to heal from things nobody had ever asked them about. And maybe they were doing their best that they could with what they had. And maybe the biggest conversation of all: you can love your family and still choose to do some things differently. For a long time, I think I believed that I had to choose, either be grateful or acknowledge what was missing. But those aren't total opposites. I can be incredibly thankful for everything my family gave me, while also recognizing there were conversations we never had. Those two things can exist at the same time. In fact, I think they have to. Because understanding where something came from isn't the same as blaming the people who passed it down. Sometimes understanding simply gives us the freedom to make a different choice. One thing I've been learning is that curiosity changes the conversation. Instead of asking, why didn't anyone teach me this? Sometimes I ask, I wonder who taught them, or what were they carrying that I may never fully understand? That doesn't erase anyone's experiences, and it doesn't excuse hurt. But I do think it creates space for compassion, both for the people who came before us and for ourselves. As you think about your own life, I'd love for you to think about these questions. What belief have you changed your mind about over the last few years? What's one conversation you wish someone had with you growing up? And what's one conversation you hope the next generation won't have to learn the hard way? As I was wrapping up this episode, I kept coming back to one thought. Every family teaches us something, and every family leaves something unfinished. Maybe our grandparents were having conversations about survival. Maybe our parents were having conversations about responsibility. In my family, respect wasn't something we talked about. It was something we lived. Showing up for one another was not optional. Neither was working hard. Those are values I'll always carry with me. But I've also realized that every generation inherits challenges the previous one couldn't fully prepare them for. And every generation has the opportunity to continue a conversation that was left unfinished. The older I get, the more I realize two things can be true at the same time. I can be grateful for everything my family gave me, while also recognizing there were conversations we never had. Those ideas don't compete with each other. If anything, they've helped me understand and love my family with more compassion. Because understanding someone's story doesn't erase our own, but it can change how we carry it. When we think about inheritance, we usually think about receiving traditions, values, family stories, but inheritance isn't just what gets passed to us. It's also what gets passed through us. And I think that's where our responsibility begins. We may not get to choose what was handed to us, but we get to choose what we hand to someone else. Maybe your family taught you resilience. Hold on to that. Maybe they taught you generosity. Keep that close. And maybe they taught you faith. Pass that on. But maybe they also passed down silence or guilt or belief that asking for help is weakness or that emotions should stay private. Those are things we get to look at, not to judge, not to blame, but to understand, because awareness gives us a choice. Maybe that's one of the greatest gifts of adulthood. We finally get the opportunity to ask questions we never knew we could ask, to learn things no one ever taught us, and to become the kind of people we needed when we were younger. And maybe that's what every generation has the opportunity to do, to carry forward the things that brought life, while having the courage to change the things that no longer do. Maybe that's how change happens. Not all at once, but one conversation at a time. And that's what this episode has been about. Not judging the people who came before us, not pretending our families were perfect, and not wishing our stories had been different, but recognizing that awareness gives us a choice. We may not get to choose what we inherited, but we do get to choose what we carry forward and what we leave behind. Because every family teaches us something. And that's where our story begins. Before we close today's episode, I want to leave you with one question. When people experience you, what do you hope they'll inherit from you? Maybe it's peace, honesty, emotional safety, faith. Maybe it's simply knowing that they can be themselves around you. Whatever your answer is, I hope it reminds you that your story didn't end with what you inherited. Every single day, you're helping write what comes next. Now, per usual, I'd love to close today's conversation with a prayer. Dear God, thank you for every generation that came before me. Thank you for the sacrifices they made, the values they passed on, and the ways they loved with the tools that they had. Thank you for the traditions, faith, resilience, and sense of family that continue to shape who I am today. Give me the wisdom to recognize both the gifts I've inherited and the places where you're inviting me to grow. Help me hold compassion for those who came before me, remembering that they were navigating life with the understanding and resources that they had at the time. Give me the courage to begin the conversations that maybe no one knew how to have before me. Teach me to communicate with honesty, to love with wisdom, to ask for help without shame, to forgive with humility, and to become the kind of person who creates emotional safety for the people around me. Help me carry forward what reflects your heart, and gently release what no longer serves me or the people you've called me to love. May the conversations that never happened before begin with me, and may my life become part of a healthier emotional legacy for the generations that come after me. Thank you for reminding me that growth is a lifelong journey and that I never have to walk it alone. In Jesus' name, amen. One of the reasons why I started Unfiltered and Unapologetic was because I wanted to create the kinds of conversations I wish I had heard growing up. Conversations about emotions, faith, relationships, money, identity, the things that shape our lives but don't always get talked about. Not because I have all the answers, but because I don't think we're meant to figure all of this out alone. Maybe we can't go back and have the conversations we never had growing up, but we can choose to start having them today. With ourselves, our families, our friends, and maybe with the next generation too. If today's episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear from you. What's one conversation you wish someone had with you growing up? You can answer by commenting on the content on TikTok, leave a comment on YouTube, or send me a message on Instagram, or comment there too. I genuinely love reading your stories, and so many of them inspire future episodes. If you're looking for additional support on your own journey, you'll find my journals and digital guides linked in the episode notes and in my bio. And if this conversation encouraged you today, the best way to support the podcast is by following the show, leaving a rating or review, and sharing this episode with someone you love. Every share helps these conversations reach someone who might need them. Thank you for spending part of your day with me. I don't take that for granted. Until next time, take care of yourself, keep asking questions, keep growing, and remember, every family member teaches us something. Every family member leaves something unfinished. Maybe the conversations we never had growing up became the conversations someone else gets to have because we were willing to start them. I'll see you in the next episode.